Okay, what we're looking at here now is my really messy palette again, and I've got a camera on it. Well, I guess you can see that I've got a camera on it. But I've mixed up some. I've had some pre-mixed neutrals on it, basically cool and warm. One set mixed from burnt sienna and ultramarine blue, the other from just black and white. Now I'm going to mix up some flesh tones because I kind of wanted to see what I could do with the dancer on the left in our picture. So I wanted to modify her flesh tone, create a new one that had a little more tone to it, or a little more chroma to it. And so I just got some cadmium orange here, and I'm setting it off to the side. I add just a tiny, I gotta scrape off this really messy palette. That orange is already mixed with some color from my palette, so you can see it's already beginning to kind of get toned. Yeah, we're going to take a look. Yeah, just pointing out the warm gray versus the cool gray and the mixtures that I already have there. Ultimately, I'm going to take and work with those grays as I mix this orange, the skin tone. So there's some white mixed with that. I get some more going. Get it up to where it needs to be. I know it looks like I'm working that pretty hard, but really it's just, it's not, the consistency of the paint isn't all that bad, so it's not like I'm hitting it over and over again. So I put some more white there. As I develop their skin tone, one of the things I wanted to point out is that I like to use a sort of constellation of colors around the basic skin tone. So I'll have a dark, a medium, and a light, and then I'll have, aside from that, green, yellow, red, blue, ultramarine blue, maybe cerulean blue, depending on the circumstances. All of which I use to modify that basic skin tone. Also, we've got these grays here that'll help to do that. So, although I like to have a dark skin tone, excuse me, I've got a cough. I don't want it to be too unsaturated or too neutral. So I'm still mixing in some orange with it. And you see some blue in there. It's going to end up being a bit, we're adding more orange, so then, yeah. My big fat hand's in the way. You could see what I was grabbing over there. Trying to mix up and soften some of that neutral, add a little bit of green. Some of that, yeah, some of that gray. Add some green to that orange mix, and you're going to get a brown, which is basically a good skin tone. I'm just pointing out I got a dark, a middle, and a light, but that's not quite right. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Most of the time, I like to kind of see where things are going to go. So the dark tone is probably going to go darker, and the middle tone is probably going to become more neutral, and that's okay. But I got 3 piles to work with 3 characteristics. And there we go. Switch the other camera. I've already applied some of that orange up into there, and now I'm working with I've decided that what I'll do with that background is that I want to go with curtains. You can see I'm adding some of that orange in with a little bit of red, and I've already done that on the right. I put some purple and a little bit of green into the background there between the curtains. Not sure what's going to happen there yet, but this seems to be the kind of direction where I'm going. So we'll darken that even a little bit more. Whenever you're working, you want to make sure not only that you use the right brush for what you're trying to do, but that you're also just on the careful side, a little bit on the careful side. Not too careful, because I like brush work, but not careless, because then you start to erode the edges where you're painting, and you change the shape of what it is that you're working on. I'm thinking. What am I thinking? I don't know. Oh, there we go. You can watch me just sort of pick up those colors. I've got a habit developed when I'm working with my palette on that little jar lid over there where next to the heart-shaped brush cleaner is a little puddle of liquid medium, and I use that on the fatter layers in order to add some gloss and speed the drying time of the paint. You never want to use liquid as a varnish or in place of a varnish, because it's not something that can be removed from the painting. The varnish layer is meant to be removed. The liquid is there. It does change it gives you extra specular quality about the painting, so you get more intense color, but the varnish will help do that too. But the varnish can be removed if it should ever get dirty, or so. I always like to varnish a painting because you never know what's going to happen to it. And sometime after a long time, if you've got a painting that's been sitting around for a little while and you're not quite sure what you want to do with it and you want to experiment a little bit, if it's varnished, you can paint on top of the varnish, and it's easier to remove what you've done if you don't like it. And if you do like it, you can wipe away that varnish and then make that modification to it. I try not to be too, I kind of let my brush wander on the palette a little bit sometimes. It's a little bit, and introduces some spontaneity, some unexpected qualities to it. And somehow or another, you end up with what will work for you. And a lot of times it's not so much the color that it's important, but the value range that you're working with. So if you're working with shadows, you can play a lot in the shadows if the value is suitable for the shadow, and you get some reflected light and luminosity within those shadows. That's where a lot of fun happens. Also like this view because the perspective shows us a more accurate representation of the proportion of the subjects. Their heads aren't too big, their body's the right size. There we go, we're back to this one. You can see I've added some, once I've started to build in the skin tones and the background, and they start working together, I'll try to bring some of the background into the skin tone, some of the skin tone into the background, with respect to lighting and shadow, but to build interest and to allow the eye something to our eyes something to play with and to kind of enjoy, hopefully endlessly. Ideas are starting to come to my mind, though, about what is going to happen in the next few painting sessions. And that's really important. And I've given myself some time to think and to wonder about what might happen and what it might mean. And that's part of the joy of painting, is that pleasure of exploration in your imagination, the surprise that you can sometimes get when you yourself are painting. You never know what's going to happen. Now there's this very sort of determined look on my face, and it tells me that I think we're getting very close to the end of this particular session, so that's about it. Looks like we're done. Past done.